Hey guys, tonight we slip into the chill evening air of Three Pines, the village that always seems like it's leaning slightly into mystery. You feel the gravel crunch under your boots, the scent of wood smoke from chimneys curling upward like sleepy thoughts. There's a hush here, a softness, as though even the trees lean closer to listen. But before we wander too deep, a quick reality check. You probably won't survive this place if you're allergic to secrets, because in this town, every latte, every glance, every shared silence holds one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the village green, the little bistro windows glowing gold against the creeping dusk. The faint laughter inside carries like wind chimes, though you can't quite catch the words. That's part of the charm. Here's snippets without context, fragments that make you lean in. You run your hand over the rough wood of a bench, noticing how the paint has flaked off in patterns that almost look like maps, trails leading nowhere. You have expect someone to pop out and tell you which secret path you've missed. The snow crunches differently underfoot here, heavier, like it knows it's carrying weight beyond weather. You pause at the sound of a door opening, a warm rectangle of light spilling across the path. For a moment, it feels like the entire village exhales. You catch sight of Armand Gamache, his coat collar turned up, his posture as measured as a chess master studying the board. He doesn't wave, but he doesn't need to. You feel the steadiness in him from a distance. The thing about Three Pines is that it never announces its mysteries with trumpets. Instead, it slides a puzzle piece under your coffee cup and waits to see if you'll notice. Tonight, though, there's a different current. You sense it in the way Clara's laugh seems forced, in how Ruth's duck Rosa flaps more nervously than usual, and in the way the trees at the edge of the village appear just a little darker, as if something waits between them. And then there it is, a flicker of movement at the tree line. Your eyes adjust, heart quickening even as your breath slows. You catch the silhouette, lean, silent, watchful. A wolf, its fur gray as smoke, eyes like twin lanterns in the dusk. For a moment, you're not sure if it's real or the product of your tired imagination. But the stillness that follows is too sharp, too precise for coincidence. The gray wolf is here, and whether flesh or phantom, its presence ripples through the night like a warning bell. You shift your weight, the cold seeping through your boots, and wonder why your instincts tell you not to move closer. Wolves have always carried symbolism, the guardians of thresholds, the shadows at the edges of civilization. Did you know that in medieval Europe, villagers would sometimes hang wolf pelts over doorways as protection, believing the animal's spirit could ward off evil? That kind of belief clings in the bones of small towns, where superstition and survival intertwine. And here, in Three Pines, those whispers feel alive again. Inside the bistro, someone drops a glass. The crash punctures the silence, and you watch as heads turn toward the window, eyes scanning the dark line of trees. You think of how, in Roman times, the story of Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf, symbolized both danger and nurture, predator and protector. Historians still argue whether the myth was a deliberate political tool or a folktale woven upward into empire. Either way, it shows you how deeply wolves have stalked our imagination. And tonight, they stalk you too. You feel the air bite sharper against your lungs as you breathe in. The wolf doesn't move, but you sense its muscles taut beneath fur, a quiet readiness. You wonder if Gamache sees it, or if he only sees the villagers' faces pressed to the glass, already shaping this shadow into rumor. Someone will say it's a sign, someone else will say it's just an animal. And you'll keep watching, because that's the only thing that feels safe. The lamplight flickers, a filament buzzing with fatigue. You notice the smallest details now, the way frost rims the bench you'd touched earlier, or how the icicles drip as though marking time. Your stomach rumbles at the smell of roasted garlic drifting from the kitchen. And you almost laugh how absurd that hunger could tug at you when a wolf lingers 10 steps away. But that's life in Three Pines, the mundane and the mystical, braiding together like strands of rope, inseparable. Your shoulders relax despite yourself, because part of you knows this wolf weather, real or omen, isn't here to strike. Not yet. It's here to unsettle, to nudge, to make you question what you thought was solid ground. You think back to those ancient Viking warriors, the Ulfednar, who wore wolf pelts and claimed the beast's ferocity in battle. Maybe the villagers should be more afraid of the human side of that story, of how people wear masks that bite deeper than any animal. Still, you remain. The cold pinches your cheeks. The village breathes in uneasy unison, and the gray wolf waits. Somewhere deep inside, you feel the opening chords of a mystery, as though the night has only just begun its tale. And you know, without anyone saying it, that nothing in Three Pines will be the same tomorrow. The night lingers heavier than you'd like, as if the village itself has tucked a secret under its pillow. You keep glancing back toward the tree line, half hoping and half dreading that the gray wolf will move again. It doesn't, at least not while you're looking. That somehow makes it worse. Absence can be louder than presence. You shuffle toward the bistro, pushing the door open and letting warmth flood over you like a sigh of relief. The smell of coffee, roasted vegetables, and slightly burnt toast hits at once, grounding you in the ordinary, while your thoughts keep sprinting back to that silhouette outside. People pretend not to notice your entrance, but they absolutely notice. You catch Clara's quick glance, her hand tightening on a mug, as though it's more than ceramic. Gabri offers you a seat, but the chair squeaks like it's protesting your weight. So you stand a little awkwardly near the fire instead. Rosa the duck eyes you like you owe her money. That's Three Pines hospitality, oddly comforting, unpolished, but real. The conversations swirl low, but you can pick up the rhythm beneath the words. A nervous undercurrent runs through the room, like everyone suddenly remembered they left their front doors unlocked. Someone mutters about wolves being rare here. Another insists they've always roamed these woods. Ruth, of course, mutters something so sharp you're surprised it doesn't cut the air in half, then cackles as though she's the only one in on the joke. Your attention drifts back to Gamache. He sits calm, sipping his drink with the patience of someone waiting for dust to settle. His stillness makes you uneasy, like he already knows where this trail leads. He listens more than he speaks, letting others fill in the gaps. And that's the trick, isn't it? People reveal themselves in silence. You catch a bit of trivia bubbling up in your mind. Wolves can run up to 40 miles in a single night, silent hunters, leaving barely a trace. It makes you wonder how far this one has traveled, what storms or hungers drove it here. Did you know that in the 18th century, French villagers sometimes staged wolf hunts, with entire towns chasing the creature across fields. People back then truly believed wolves carried curses in their jaws, as if the animals themselves were emissaries of dark forces. Quirky, maybe, but not so far off from the way these villagers are staring into their tea now, convinced one furry shadow means the world has tilted. The fire snaps. You jump, embarrassed by how jumpy you've become. Gabri chuckles, slides a plate of food across the counter, and tells you to eat something. You obey, because resisting hospitality in this place feels like a worse crime than trespassing. The food is simple bread thick enough to stop a bullet, stew that smells like it's been tended for hours. Your spoon clinks against the bowl, loud in the hush, and still no one talks about what's really gnawing them. They circle it like wary cats. Their words about weather and repairs and books, all scaffolding around the wolf-shaped hole in the conversation. You wonder if that's always the way people avoid staring directly at the thing they fear, hoping it vanishes if left unacknowledged. Gamache finally clears his throat. Just a soft sound, but it settles everyone like a hand on the shoulder. He says nothing about wolves, only asks about the village, about Clara's paintings, about the latest gossip from Montreal. But you can tell he's listening beneath the surface, weighing tone and timing, measuring silence as much as speech. You find yourself trying to copy his stillness, though you nearly choke on your stew in the process. Someone suggests maybe the wolf isn't real, just a trick of the snow and shadows. Another swears they saw its breath plume in the cold. Historians still argue whether wolves in early Canadian folklore were cast as villains because of genuine fear or because settlers projected their own anxieties onto the landscape. That debate feels alive here, as though these villagers are reenacting centuries-old arguments without realizing it. The windows fog over from heat and breath, turning the outside into a vague smear of white and gray. You find yourself leaning closer to the glass, hoping to see something, anything, but nothing moves. Your own reflection stares back at you, pale eyes slightly wide. You look like someone auditioning badly for a horror movie. A sound outside breaks the moment. A crunch, deliberate, measured, heads snap toward the door. Rosa flaps once, squawking like she's delivering a press release. Everyone waits. The latch rattles, but it's only Olivier returning from the cellar with another bottle. The tension drops in a rush of laughter, though the laughter sounds brittle, more like a defense mechanism than amusement. You glance at Gamache again. His eyes are half-lidded, but you'd bet your last piece of toast he hasn't missed a single flicker of emotion in the room. He takes another sip, sets the cup down, and murmurs something you don't catch. It doesn't matter. You get the sense he's already working, already connecting dots you can't even see yet. The fire dims a little, casting longer shadows against the walls. You think about how wolves were once nearly wiped out across Europe, hunted so relentlessly that people built entire careers on extermination. Now, conservationists argue for their return, insisting that ecosystems need their balance. You can't help but smirk. Funny how something once cursed as a monster becomes a symbol of environmental healing. Maybe one day Rosa will be the mascot of a recycling campaign. Stranger things have happened. The night grows late. One by one, villagers drift home, their boots leaving little constellations in the snow outside. You linger, reluctant to step back into the dark. Gamache rises, thanks Gabri quietly, and with a nod that feels like a benediction, he heads toward the door. You follow, because staying behind feels lonelier than braving whatever waits in the shadows. The cold greets you like a slap, crisp and bracing. The trees stand silent, their branches clawing the sky. The wolf is gone or hiding, which feels worse. You can't decide. You tug your coat tighter, listening to your breath puff white into the night. Gamache's pace is steady, unhurried, as though danger isn't a wolf at all, but fear itself. You walk beside him, the snow creaking underfoot, and feel the mystery settle deeper into your bones. The gray wolf has appeared, and though unseen now, its presence lingers, woven into the fabric of 3 pines like thread through wool. You know this is just the beginning, and the village is already bracing for the story yet to unfold. The morning arrives, not with a blazing sunrise, but with that peculiar pale light that makes snow glow, as if from within. You step outside, boots crunching on the fresh dusting, and the air tastes sharp enough to wake you better than coffee. It's quiet to quiet, the kind of hush that makes you strain your ears for sounds you can't name. Somewhere a raven croaks, its voice like an old hinge, and you swear it's mocking you. You catch sight of Gamache again, already awake, his breath fogging in calm bursts. He's standing by the bench you noticed last night, the one with peeling paint maps, his gloved hand resting lightly on the back. His eyes scan the ground, but not in a way that screams urgency. He's patient, methodical, letting details float to him rather than forcing them out. You admire that, though if you tried it yourself, you'd probably just end up staring blankly until your toes froze. The villagers emerge slowly, bundled in mismatched coats and scarves, each carrying that guarded expression of people pretending they slept well. Clara carries her sketchbook. Ruth lurches out with Rosa tucked under her arm like a grumpy handbag, and Gabri waves dramatically, as if the world were a stage. You notice everyone's eyes keep darting toward the woods, like guilty children checking if the principal is watching. Gamache crouches to study the snow. You shuffle closer, your breath fogging beside his. The snow is etched with Mark's paw prints, elongated, sharp at the tips, wolf tracks. You feel your stomach dip, like missing a step on the stairs. But Gamache doesn't gasp or flinch. Instead, he traces the edges with his gloved finger, murmuring under his breath. You almost expect him to say, "Case closed," but of course he doesn't. He's not that kind of detective. A stray thought tickles your mind. In ancient Rome, hunters used to sprinkle ash over snow to make animal tracks more visible. It's one of those practical tricks that feels almost too clever for how old it is. You half wish for a bucket of ash right now, just to make the trail scream louder. Gamache, though, doesn't need tricks. His eyes narrow slightly, his body still as a statue. You can tell he's filing every contour, every indentation, into the vast library in his head. He rises slowly, and you match his pace as he strolls toward the edge of the trees. The others keep a careful distance, torn between curiosity and survival instincts. Ruth mutters something about the wolf having better fashion sense than half the village, which earns her a glare and a giggle at the same time. You can't help but grins. Good to know sarcasm survives, even at the edge of potential peril. Gamache pauses at the tree line, studying broken branches and the way frost has been disturbed. You notice, with a chill, that the tracks don't wander aimlessly, they circle, as if the wolf was watching, waiting, considering. That thought makes your coat feel suddenly thinner. There's a quirky bit of trivia about wolves. Unlike dogs, their tracks almost always form straight lines, as though efficiency is wired into their bones. Dogs wander in zigzags, sniffing every distraction, but wolves walk like soldiers on a mission. These tracks look like the latter. You wonder what mission the gray wolf has in mind. Gamache turns back toward the village, his expression unreadable. He doesn't speak yet, but his silence feels weighted, like he's stacking invisible stones on a scale only he can see. You trail him as he walks back, the snow crunching in counterpoint. The others pepper him with questions. What did he see? Was it real? Is it dangerous? But he answers with that maddening calm, each word deliberate, each phrase laced with reassurance, but never dismissal. Inside the bistro, warmth greets you again, though it feels thinner than last night, stretched over growing unease. Gamache takes a seat by the window, his coffee steaming. He writes a few notes, then just sits, watching, waiting. His patience is unnerving, as though he knows the wolf isn't the true problem, just the messenger. You sip your own drink, feeling jittery in comparison, like you're the cartoon sidekick vibrating beside a stoic hero. A memory drifts into your thoughts. In medieval France, villagers sometimes staged elaborate trials for wolves that attacked livestock, treating them as criminals. The wolves were convicted and symbolically executed, as if justice could be satisfied by punishing an animal. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or social theater, a way for communities to process fear. Watching the villagers whisper now, you see echoes of that same theater fear personified, then debated. Gamache interrupts your spiral with a quiet question. Had anyone noticed anything strange before the wolf appeared? A door left ajar, a missing item, unusual visitors. His tone is soft, but it slices through the room like a scalpel. The villagers shift in their seats, eyes darting anywhere but his. You can almost hear the gears grinding as memories surface, excuses form, denials rehearse. Someone mentions hearing howls 2 nights ago but brushed them off as wind. Another admits to finding their compost bin overturned, though blames raccoons. Ruth mutters about seeing eyes in the dark for years, which no one bothers to challenge. Piece by piece, Gamache collects fragments, though he never forces them to fit. You realize he's building a mosaic, one you can't yet see, but he already senses the image beneath. The day drags into afternoon. Snow drifts lazily outside, blurring the outlines of the village. Gamache rises occasionally, pacing, pausing to watch the street, then returning to his notes. You trail him with your eyes, trying to decipher patterns in his movements. But maybe that's the trick. There are none you can follow, because his map is internal, his rhythm one only he can hear. At one point, Rosa waddles over, stares at you with unblinking judgment, then bites your bootlace. You laugh, startled, which earns a ripple of chuckles around the room. For a brief moment, the tension thins. It's absurd. You think how a duck can break fear's grip better than hot drinks or heavy words. But when evening creeps in again, the hush returns. Outside, the forest looms like a dark sea, every tree a mast on a ghost ship. You feel eyes on you, even when you know there's nothing there. Gamache notices too, you can tell by the way he pauses at the window, gaze steady, shoulders squared. He doesn't look afraid, though just prepared. You step closer, following his line of sight. The snow lies smooth, no fresh tracks. Still, your chest tightens with that uncanny certainty. The gray wolf hasn't gone anywhere. It's waiting, circling, as silent as Gamache's thoughts. And you realize that his calculations, the quiet weighing of detail against detailer, just beginning. The next morning, frost clings stubbornly to the window panes like lace someone forgot to take down. You breathe against the glass, and the fog of your breath briefly blurs the village beyond. Somewhere a door slams, and you hear muffled voices, rising, sharp-edged. Conflict always wakes up earlier than peace. You shuffle into the street, boots squeaking, only to find a knot of villagers gathered in the square. Their faces are pale with cold, and something sharper resentment, unearthed like a root to long buried. Clara gestures animatedly with her sketchbook, while Olivier folds his arms like a barricade. Ruth, naturally, heckles from the side, her commentary just loud enough to sting. Rosa the duck punctuates it all with a quack so well-timed it feels rehearsed. At the center, Gamache listens, always listening. His hands are folded behind his back, his brow furrowed, but his voice stays calm when he speaks. He's not here to fan flames, he's here to study how they burn. You linger at the edge, watching words fly like arrows, trying not to flinch when they hit invisible targets. The grievances spill out quickly. Old property lines disputed, arguments over art commissions, simmering jealousy over whose work hangs in which gallery. Someone mutters about stolen firewood, someone else about broken promises. It's like the gray wolf prowled in and shook loose the village's attic, scattering grievances across the floor. You think about how in the 1600s, French settlers in Quebec built palisades, not only against external threats, but also to mark invisible lines between families. Territory wasn't just about survival, it was about pride. And pride, as you see here, ages like milk. Gamache raises a hand, and slowly the noise drops. He doesn't scold, doesn't demand they hush because they want to hear him. He asks a single question. What does a wolf gain by circling a village? Silence. You feel the weight of it pressing down because no one wants to answer. You sense the real question underneath. What do people gain by circling each other with suspicion? A quirky tidbit sneaks into your mind. Did you know that in 19th century Paris, fashionable ladies once wore necklaces of wolf teeth as charms against bad luck? Imagine Clara pulling that off at her next gallery showing, though. Knowing her, she'd make it look avant-garde rather than barbaric. You chuckle under your breath, but it dies quickly as you notice Clara's tight expression. This isn't fashion for her, it's personal. Gamache begins asking about movements, whereabouts, little details that might stitch together into a pattern. You realize he's not only cataloging wolf sightings, he's tracking people to where were you last night, who lingered by the woods, who left a light on too late. The questions slip beneath the surface like fishing lines, baited with patience. Historians still argue whether wolves in folklore represented external danger or internal guilt, the beast at the door or the beast within. Watching Olivier and Gabriel argue about whether their cellar door was properly locked, you suspect the debate applies here too. Are they afraid of the wolf or of each other? You drift closer, listening as tempers flare again. Someone accuses another of hoarding supplies. Another snaps back with an old insult about laziness. It's messy, human, and oddly reassuring, if only because fear rarely makes people saints. You're reminded of an uncomfortable truth. Communities are often most fragile, not when attacked from outside, but when distrust grows inside. Gamache lets the quarrel wind down, his silence steady as snowfall. Finally, he says softly, "Sometimes the shadow we fear is cast by our own lantern." The villagers blink, as if he's spoken a riddle they're unwilling to solve. You feel the words burrow under your skin, though you know exactly what he means. Later, as the crowd disperses, Clara lingers. She sketches absently, her pencil scratching like a restless insect on paper. You peek and see lines forming not of wolves, but of people, faces half-shadowed, expressions sharp. You can't help but think her art might reveal more truth than the arguments did. Ruth shuffles past, muttering something about how wolves at least have the decency not to paint their neuroses. Rosa quacks in agreement, and you laugh, despite yourself. Humor, thin as it is, feels like a lifeline in the chill. As evening draws near, you sit by the fire in the bistro, trying to shake off the unease. Gamache joins you briefly, his notebook balanced on his knee. He doesn't share what he's written, you doubt he ever will, but he offers you a steady glance that feels like both reassurance and warning. His calculations are adding up, though you can't see the sum yet. Outside, the wolf howls. The sound slides through the night like a blade across glass, eerie and unplaceable. The villagers freeze, mugs half-raised, spoons suspended in midair. You feel the hair on your arms rise. It's not just the presence of the wolf, it's what the sound awakens inside each of them, inside you. You realize then that old wounds don't heal just because time passes. They wait, like tracks in the snow, until something or someone reminds you to look down. And the gray wolf, whether beast or omen, has done exactly that. The howl still hangs in the air the next morning, echoing in your chest long after the sound has gone. You wake with it lodged behind your ribs, like a note that refuses to resolve. The village looks the same, snow piled neatly, chimneys puffing, paths cleared, but you know better. You can feel the subtle shift, as though every shadow has gained half an inch. Gamache is already outside, walking slow, steady steps toward the edge of the square. You follow, the cold biting at your cheeks, your breath puffing like smoke signals. He's studying the snow again, bending low, brushing frost with his gloved fingers. You crouch, too, though you mostly succeed in getting snow down your boots. Their prints, fresh, leading toward the woods. Claw marks, sharp, deep. The villagers gather at a distance, whispering in tight knots. Clara clutches her sketchbook like a shield. Gabri's arms are crossed in defiance. And Ruth is sipping something from a flask at 9 in the morning, which you pretend not to notice. Rosa, of course, quacks loud enough to be part of the investigative team. Gamache traces the line of tracks into the trees, but then pauses. The prints double back, looping oddly, leading nowhere clear. It feels intentional, like someone rearranging furniture just to confuse you. You frown, and Gamache hums softly, as if the wolf is teasing him with riddles. You can't help recalling a quirky tidbit during the French Revolution. Some villagers believed wolves were royal spies, trained by the monarchy to terrorize peasants into submission. Obviously nonsense, but standing here, staring at looping tracks, you wonder if the gray wolf has its own agenda. And stranger things have been believed. The group pushes closer, nerves sparking. Someone suggests the wolf might be sick, rabid. Another claims it's no wolf at all, but a dog gone wild. The arguments grow until you half expect someone to start drawing diagrams in the snow. Gamache.com, as ever, says nothing, just notes the interruptions in the pattern. A gust of wind sends ice crystals swirling, stinging your face. You rub your eyes, and for a moment you swear you see movement deeper in the woods, a flicker of gray slipping behind a tree. When you blink, it's gone. Did you imagine it? You're not sure, and that uncertainty gnaws worse than fear. You remember reading about wolf traps in the 18th century, massive contraptions baited with raw meat, built like miniature fortresses. Farmers thought brute force would solve everything. Yet historians still argue whether those traps were more about catching wolves or about proving to frightened communities that something was being done. You can see that same hunger for answers in the villagers now. Action, any action, feels better than waiting. Gamache straightens, snow clinging to his knees, and finally speaks. The wolf circles for a reason. His voice is low, meant more for himself than the group, but it carries. The villagers glance uneasily at one another. You feel a shiver crawl your spine, not from the cold, but from the possibility that the wolf's purpose has nothing to do with hunger. Back at the bistro, the air is thick, steamed up with coffee and nerves. The window panes fog, obscuring the view outside. You wipe a circle clear with your sleeve, staring out, as though the wolf might appear at any second, nose pressed against the glass. Instead, you see only snow drifting lazily, disguising tracks, erasing evidence. Clara sketches feverishly, her pencil scratching, quick and desperate. You peek at the page. What she's drawing isn't a wolf, but the tracks, looping endlessly, like a maze. You feel dizzy, staring at it. She notices your glance and flips the page with a tight smile, but the image lingers in your mind. Later, you wander toward the bookstore. mRNA stands among shelves, her presence solid, grounding. She asks softly if you've seen it again. You shake your head, though even your denial feels flimsy. mRNA nods knowingly, as though she's not asking about the wolf at all, but about fear itself. You wonder if she's right. Outside, twilight deepens, and the sky bleeds into indigo. Snow muffles every step, every sound. Then you hear it, a rustle, faint but distinct, coming from behind the bakery. Your heart stutters, and you creep closer, feeling both foolish and compelled. There, in the snow, another set of prints, fresh, too fresh. But something's wrong. The stride is uneven, as if limping. You trace the line, only for it to end abruptly, vanishing near a shed. You circle it, searching for continuation, but nothing. Just silence, just stillness. It's as though the wolf evaporated. Gamache appears at your side, silent as snowfall. He studies the prints, eyes narrowing slightly. Then he mutters, "Not everything is as it seems." You nod, though you're not sure if he's speaking to you or the night. Back in the bistro, villagers debate loudly. Was it closer? Was it injured? Was it even real? Someone slams a hand on the table, insisting they saw glowing eyes. Another swears it was nothing but wind and imagination. The arguments spiral, looping as oddly as the tracks outside. You rub your temples, wishing for quiet, though you know quiet doesn't exist here anymore. Historians still argue whether wolves vanished from parts of Europe due to overhunting or due to fear-driven myth-making that exaggerated their numbers. Watching these villagers, you think maybe it doesn't matter, the result is the same. Fear reshapes landscapes as effectively as bullets. Night descends heavy, pressing against the windows. You settle by the fire, weary but restless. Rosa snores nearby, oddly soothing. You almost drift off when you hear it again, the howl, distant but clear, slicing through the dark. You sit upright, heart pounding. The villagers freeze, breath caught. Gamache remains still, only his eyes glinting in the firelight. The gray wolf is out there. Its tracks taunt you, its absence unnerves you, and its presence feels like the opening of a door you can't yet see. And deep down, you sense the truth. The hunt is no longer about the wolf alone. The howl fades, but its echo lingers in your bones, the kind of sound that stains silence long after it's gone. You lie awake longer than you mean to, listening for another call, until exhaustion finally pulls you under. When you wake, the sun is a pale coin in the sky, weak and distant, like it's reluctant to warm this corner of the world. Stepping outside, you find the village hushed again. But it isn't ordinary quiet. It's the wary stillness of people pretending life is normal. Clara stands in front of her studio, a half-finished canvas leaning against the wall. She waves distractedly, eyes elsewhere, brush in hand like a nervous talisman. Ruth mutters into her scarf, Rosa dangling indignantly under her arm. Even Gabri's usual exuberance feels dialed down, like a radio signal struggling through static. Gamache is there, of course, walking deliberately along the edge of the trees. His gaze flicks to broken branches, scraps of fur snagged on bark, subtle things you wouldn't have noticed if you weren't following his line of sight. He pauses, crouches, and brushes the snow aside to reveal a shallow impression, not quite a track, but more like a resting spot. You crouch, too, though you're mostly squinting at what looks like, well, snow. He, however, sees a page in a book already written. The thought creeps in. What if this isn't just an animal wandering? What if the gray wolf has a story, a past, tangled somehow with this place? That's when mRNA joins you, arms folded against the cold, her voice soft but steady. Wolves don't just appear, she says. They're driven. You're not sure whether she's talking about hunger, history, or something else entirely. A quirky tidbit drifts up. Did you know that in Norse mythology, two wolves, Skull and Hati, are said to chase the sun and moon until they devour them at Ragnarok? You imagine the villagers explaining that over brunch. Don't mind the wolf, he's just here to eat the moon. You chuckle, but the humor sours quickly, because right now the symbolism feels too on the nose. Gamache listens to mRNA without interrupting, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though her words add a piece to his puzzle. He says nothing, though simply gestures toward the woods. You step with him into the trees, the branches creaking like tired bones overhead. Inside, it feels different, darker, denser, like the air thickens with each step. You spot faint signs, more tracks, tufts of fur, even a patch of disturbed earth where something heavy pressed down. You imagine the wolf lying there, hidden, watching. The thought makes your skin prickle. You pause at a strange mark carved into the bark of a tree. Not claws too deliberate, too straight, a knife, maybe. You run your glove over it, feeling the groove. It's old, but not ancient. You glance at Gamache, and his expression tightens. He knows something, though he doesn't say what. Historians still argue whether wolves in indigenous Canadian stories were seen primarily as guides or as threats. Some traditions honor them as teachers of endurance and loyalty, while colonial writings painted them as enemies of civilization. Standing here, you sense both truths overlapping, as if the wolf is both warning and omen, protector and predator. You walk further, the snow muffling your steps, until you reach a clearing. There you find it a set of bones, small, bleached by time. Animal bones, probably deer, though your stomach flips at first sight. Clara, who followed at a distance, gasps softly. The wolf's past is written here in fragments of meals, survival, carved into the earth. But it's not only the wolf's past. Nearby you spot another object, half buried in snow-rusted tin, its lid bent, filled with scraps of paper. Gamache lifts it carefully, his gloved fingers brushing away frost. The papers inside are brittle, handwritten, fragments of letters or notes. You can't make out the words, but the ink strokes look frantic. The villagers whisper, uneasy. Who left this here, and why? Gamache doesn't answer, only tucks the tin under his arm. You sense he's connecting something larger than the wolf itself, threads tying the animal to human secrets. The wolf isn't only a beast wandering hungry. It's a mirror held up to 3 pines, reflecting what people would rather ignore. Back in the village, the tin becomes the latest object of gossip. Some insist it's old love letters, others swear it's evidence of a crime. Ruth claims it's a recipe book, though her grin suggests she'd say anything to watch people squirm. Rosa quacks approvingly, as though scandal is her favorite sport. That evening, as the sun sinks low, Gamache sits quietly at the bistro with the tin beside him. He hasn't opened it in front of anyone, not yet. His calm is infuriating, like someone holding the answer to a riddle but refusing to share. You sip your drink, jittery eyes flicking to the tin every 5 seconds. And then it happens outside the frosted window, a flicker of movement. The gray wolf, it doesn't move closer, doesn't retreat, just stands, silent, watching. The room stills, conversations dying, mid-sentence. It feels like a test, as though the wolf is waiting to see who flinches first. Gamache doesn't move. He lifts his glass slowly, takes a sip, and sets it down. Only then does the wolf turn, slipping back into the dark, as if the night itself swallowed it. You release a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding, heart hammering. You realize then, the gray wolf isn't just wandering here by accident. It carries stories, both its own and those the villagers project onto it. Its past and their pasts are tangled together, like roots beneath frozen soil. And Gamache, patient and quiet, is the only one who seems willing to dig down. The village wakes the next morning under a heavy quilt of clouds, the kind that press low, promising more snow and maybe a touch of unease. You shuffle through the fresh powder, your breath puffing like little ghosts, and notice how even the laughter spilling from the bistro feels thinner than usual. It's as though every conversation has been wrapped in cotton wool, hushed, cautious, half-finished. Gamache sits near the fire, posture relaxed but eyes sharp. He isn't saying much, but you can tell he's listening to everything, collecting scraps of truth like breadcrumbs. Across the room, Clara and mRNA argue in low voices, their gestures small but sharp, like 2 friends who love each other too much to stay silent, yet too proud to concede. You catch words like truth and responsibility before Gabri sweeps in, offering them steaming mugs, as though cocoa could glue fractures back together. Spoiler, cocoa is good, but not that good. This is the thing about 3 Pines, you think it's cozy. All fireplaces and croissants, but then old wounds creep up through the floorboards. Someone mutters about land disputes from decades ago. Someone else brings up a bitter inheritance quarrel. And suddenly you're knee-deep in grudges, dressed as community spirit. It's oddly comforting, though, like realizing even the most idyllic postcard has coffee stains if you look close enough. Out in the square, Ruth launches into one of her tirades. loyalties, she croaks, glaring at anyone within range. You're all as loyal as cat, selfish, smug, and shedding fur everywhere. Rosa quacks, as if seconding the insult. You laugh, despite yourself, earning a sharp glance from a villager who clearly doesn't find the comparison flattering. Still, you have to admit, Ruth has a point. Loyalties here seem to shift like snowdrifts in the wind. Gamache begins testing those loyalties subtly. A question here, a raised eyebrow there, as if he's less interested in the answers and more in how people react. Does Clara flinch? Does Olivia's voice tighten? Does mRNA suddenly change the subject? Each tiny moment becomes another data point. You realize you're part of this silent experiment too, trying to read everyone as though they're characters in a mystery novel you're still writing. A mainstream historical fact sneaks in during a quiet chat with MRAA. She reminds you that in 18th century France, wolf attacks were so common that entire villages organized hunts and bounties were offered to anyone who killed one. People feared wolves, not just as predators, but as symbols of chaos forces that refused to bow to human order. It's a reminder that fear of wolves has always been about more than teeth. It's about control. And yet, a quirky tidbit surfaces when Gabri casually shares that in 1920s Hollywood, wolf pelts were once sold as glamorous fur wraps, making wolves both vilified and fetishized. Imagine explaining that to the gray wolf. Yes, you're terrifying, but also, we'd love to drape you over a starlet at a movie premiere. No wonder the animal seems unimpressed with humanity. You follow Gamache as he speaks quietly with the villagers, his calm demeanor both soothing and infuriating. He doesn't accuse, he invites. He doesn't demand, he nudges, and yet each conversation feels like a pressure cooker, steam building until someone blurts a confession about something unrelated, like secretly resenting their neighbor's new fence or regretting a love left unspoken. Historians still argue whether loyalty in small communities is driven more by shared survival or by fear of being ostracized. In Three Pines, you suspect it's both. Everyone relies on everyone else, yet no one wants to be the one left out in the cold, metaphorically or literally. The wolf outside seems to embody that balance, pack loyalty versus solitary survival. By late afternoon, tensions finally spill into the open. At the bistro, Olivier slams his hand on the counter, accusing Clara of hiding something. Clara fires back, cheeks flushed, her voice breaking with both fury and fear. Gabri tries to calm them, but his usually jovial tone falters. Even Rosa quacks nervously, like she's worried her duck reputation might get caught in the crossfire. You feel the weight of these unraveling bonds pressing against your chest. The gray wolf hasn't attacked anyone, yet it prowls just beyond the tree line, and somehow that alone is enough to expose every fracture in this tiny community. It's as if the animal doesn't need to do anything. Its mere presence turns neighbor against neighbor. Gamache finally rises, his chair scraping softly against the floor. He doesn't shout, he simply says, "Enough." And the room stills, the way snow muffles sound in the forest. He reminds you, that loyalty isn't tested in comfort, it's tested in fear. Everyone looks down, ashamed, but no one leaves. Later, walking back to your room, you can't shake the sense that you're carrying the villagers' anxieties in your own pockets, jangling with every step. Above you, clouds part for a moment, revealing a pale slice of moon. You half expect to hear the wolf's call again, but the night remains silent. Silent, but not empty. The loyalty of the packor, the betrayal of it feels, as though it's hiding in the dark, waiting. Morning cracks open, brittle and bright, the kind of light that makes the snow look like it's been dusted with glitter. Pretty, sure, but it also makes every track visible, every broken twig stand out. You tug your coat tighter and follow Gamache as he walks deliberately toward the woods again, his boots crunching in rhythm. He doesn't speak much, but you sense the investigation has coiled tighter, like a net about to cinch. At the edge of the trees, you notice more tracks this time, not just paw prints, but human ones, leading in parallel. You swallow hard. The gray wolf is no longer the only shadow moving out there. Your breath puffs in the cold air, and for a second, you imagine it's a signal flare, giving away your position. If you were in a thriller movie, this is the part where the ominous music swells. Too bad there's only the creak of branches overhead. Back in the bistro, villagers crowd around Gamache as he lays out what he's gathered. He doesn't slam files on the table or deliver dramatic speeches. He simply arranges facts like puzzle pieces, letting the shape form in everyone's mind. A scrap of fur, a rusted tin of letters, old marks on a tree, whispers of grudges. He speaks softly, almost kindly, and that makes the air hum with more tension than any accusation would. You glance around the room, watching expressions flicker like faulty bulbs. Clara avoids eye contact. Olivier fiddles with a spoon. Myrna's face is unreadable, though her stillness feels deliberate. Even Ruth, usually delighted to stir chaos, sits oddly quiet, muttering under her breath but keeping Rosa tucked close. It's clear everyone is wondering, is the gray wolf just an animal or is it bait in a trap? Gamache asks a single, pointed question. Who benefits from fear? The silence that follows could snap a tree in two. You realize this isn't just about paw prints and bones. Fear itself has become the weapon. A mainstream historical fact fits here too neatly to ignore. In medieval Europe, wolves were often used in propaganda to symbolize chaos, sin, or external enemies. Leaders painted their rivals as wolves among the flock, justifying control through fear. You can practically hear Gamache reminding the room, fear has always been easy to manufacture and always profitable for someone. And then, because your brain refuses to let the mood get too heavy, you remember a quirky tidbit. In 2011, scientists in Russia discovered that some wolves will actually sled down snowy hills for fun, like giant kids on toboggans. Imagine the Three Pines gray wolf sneaking off at night to go joyriding down slopes, while the villagers panic. That mental picture almost makes you giggle. Still, the tension thickens. Gamache sets a trap, though not the iron kind you might expect. His trap is conversation, slow and deliberate, coaxing one villager into contradiction, another into an unguarded confession. You feel yourself drawn in, watching loyalties shift like chess pieces sliding across the board. Finally, the reveal arrives, though not with fireworks. Gamache calmly opens the rusted tin in front of everyone, spreading the fragile papers on the table. They're not love letters, not recipes, not random scribbles. They're fragments of journal entries, written decades ago by someone who once lived in Three Pines. The words angry, frightened, obsessed describe watching a wolf, feeling hunted, convinced the animal mirrored their own descent into isolation. The room stiffens. For a moment, you feel like the walls themselves are leaning in, eager to listen. Gamache explains gently that the gray wolf isn't just a visitor. It's tied to this place by memory, by human stories layered into its myth. Whether or not it's the same animal, the legend has teeth, and someone has been feeding it. Historians still argue whether folklore grows out of real events or if real events bend themselves to fit folklore. You're standing in the middle of that debate, living inside the blurry overlap. Is the gray wolf a creature of flesh and blood, or the echo of someone's fear, passed down like a cursed heirloom? The villagers shift uneasily. Some look relieved, others unsettled, but no one looks satisfied. You realize that's the point. Truth doesn't clean everything up with a bow. It just rearranges the mess into a shape you can live with. As dusk falls, Gamache walks out to the edge of the village, you trailing close behind. Snowflakes drift lazily down, catching in your eyelashes. There, across the clearing, the gray wolf stands again. This time, you notice something different. Its gaze doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like acknowledgement, as though it knows the trap has been sprung, the truth laid bare, and now it can finally step back into shadow. The wolf lingers, head high, eyes pale as starlight, and then, with one slow turn, it pads into the forest, vanishing between the trees as if it was never really there. You stand frozen, breath shallow, wondering if you'll ever know for certain what was flesh and what was legend. Gamache doesn't chase. He only watches until the last flicker of movement disappears, then turns toward the village. It's done, he says quietly. You follow, though you know deep down nothing is ever truly done in Three Pines. Snow falls through the night, soft and steady, layering the village in a hush so deep you can almost believe everything is mended. By morning, roofs sag under fresh white weight, chimneys send up lazy spirals of smoke, and Three Pines looks like the cover of a holiday card. Picturesque, sure, but you know better now. Beneath the sugarcoating, cracks run deep. At the bistro, mugs clink and voices murmur, but conversation circles warily. The gray wolf is gone at least from sight, but its shadow still prowls in everyone's mind. You sense it in the way Clara keeps her eyes on the window, or the way Olivier scrubs the counter with a little too much force. Fear doesn't evaporate overnight. It lingers like smoke in the curtains. Gamache moves quietly among them, listening, offering a nod here, a gentle word there. He's not just wrapping up an investigation, he's stitching the community back together, thread by thread. And yet, you see the weight he carries. Every decision leaves a mark. Every judgment tips scales between mercy and punishment. You overhear mRNA say something that sticks. Mercy is rarely clean, she's right. Mercy means someone must carry the burden of letting go, while punishment means everyone can pretend the slate is wiped. Neither feels perfect. You watch Gamache weigh that balance like a man who knows perfection is a myth. A mainstream historical fact drifts to mind. In ancient Rome, Mercior Clementio was considered a political strategy as much as a virtue. Emperors granted it not from kindness but to bind loyalty, to remind citizens who held the power to destroy them. Mercy and control tangled together like vines. On the other hand, a quirky tidbit slips into your thoughts like comic relief. Medieval wolf trials. Yes, people once dragged actual wolves into makeshift courts, complete with judges declaring them guilty of theft or murder. Imagine the solemnity of lawyers arguing while a wolf lounges in the defendant's chair. You can't help but snicker. Justice, apparently, has always been a little absurd. Still, the reckoning in Three Pines is less theatrical, more intimate. Conversations happen in corners, apologies whispered and sometimes rejected. Ruth mutters about people being fools, but leaves a loaf of bread outside Clara's door anyway. Clara pretends not to notice, but slices it for breakfast the next morning. Olivier and Gabri bicker like always, but the pauses between words feel softer. It's the small domestic gestures that heal, not grand declarations. Historians still argue whether communities survive by confronting truth directly or by smoothing it over with shared rituals. Watching Three Pines, you realize it's probably both. The truth matters, yes, but so does the daily act of breaking bread, of shoveling your neighbor's walkway, of offering warmth even when your heart is sore. As night falls, you sit by the fire in the bistro. Gamache joins you, silent for a while, then says, "Wolves teach us. They survive because of the pack, but they also survive alone." Both truths matter. His words settle into you, heavy and calming, like snow blanketing the earth. You glance out the window, half hoping, half dreading, another glimpse of pale eyes. But the night is empty, just flakes swirling lazily under the lamplight. Still, you know the gray wolf hasn't vanished completely. It lingers in stories, in the way villagers lower their voices when talking about fear, in the echo it carved inside you. Later, in your room, you lie awake, listening to the fan hum and the old pipes creak. You think about mercy and punishment, about how both leave scars, about how communities survive storms, not by avoiding fractures, but by tending them afterward. You realize that in Three Pines, moral reckoning isn't a courtroom, it's a kitchen table, a loaf of bread, a quiet word in the dark. And with that, you let your eyes close, though part of you stays alert, listening for a distant howl that may or may not ever come again. The storm has passed, though its memory lingers in the cold corners of the village. You step into the square, snow crunching beneath your boots, and notice how everything feels softer now. Chimneys puff steady trails into the pale sky, and children drag sleds across fresh drifts. The air stills with that delicate quiet that comes only after something heavy has been carried through. Inside the bistro, light spills golden against frosted windows. Gabri hums tunelessly as he stacks cups. Olivier rearranges pastries with more care than necessary, and Clara doodles absent-minded sketches in the corner. Even Ruth, perched like a gargoyle by the fire, mutters, with less venom than usual. Rosa blinks sleepily under her wing, as if even ducks appreciate a reprieve. Gamache enters, moving slowly but deliberately, and the room responds with a subtle shift. People relax, conversations ripple again, laughter returns in cautious bubbles. You sense everyone knows the gray wolf hasn't truly left. It remains stitched into the village's story. But the fear has loosened its grip, replaced by something steadier, gentler. You realize this is how healing looks here. Not sweeping gestures, not proclamations, but small comforts, layered until they form a quilt strong enough to keep the cold out. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind in the 19th century. Conservationists in North America began to realize wolves, once hunted nearly to extinction, were essential for balancing ecosystems. Where wolves returned, forests healed, rivers changed course, prey grew healthier. Even in nature, survival and stability depend on tension, not the absence of it. And because you can't resist, A quirky tidbit researchers once documented wolves singing together in different pitches, almost like a choir rehearsing. Imagine the gray wolf out there now, leading woodland karaoke night, while villagers debate which pastry goes best with coffee. It's a comforting image, the wild and the domestic sharing one soundtrack. Historians still argue whether stories of wolves reveal more about the animals or about ourselves. Are we projecting fear, longing, admiration onto creatures who simply live their lives? Standing here, you sense the answer doesn't matter. What matters is the story's weight, the way it shapes choices, binds neighbors, reminds everyone they're part of something bigger. Later, as the sun dips low and lamps flicker on, you sit near the window. Snow drifts lazily past, the world wrapped in quiet light. Gamache rests nearby, hands folded, gaze calm. He doesn't speak, and he doesn't need to. The silence itself feels like closure, an exhale long overdue. And so, you let yourself soften with the village, warmth sinking in like slow fire. The gray wolf has come and gone, but its echo lives here, now less menace, more reminder of survival, of loyalty, of how even fragile communities. Now the pace eases, your breath slowing to match the rhythm of the snow outside. The lights in 3 Pines dim one by one, houses sinking into quiet like tired shoulders beneath blankets. The hush stretches across rooftops, across fields, across the forest itself, until even the trees seem to sigh in relief. You let the edges of the story blur, not needing to hold every detail anymore. Instead, you focus on the softness of it, the hum of the fan nearby, the weight of covers around your shoulders, the comfort of knowing that for tonight, at least, there are no eyes watching from the dark, just rest, just quiet. The villagers drift into their own evenings. Gabriel wipes the last counter. Olivier lowers the lights. Clara sets aside her brush. Ruth snores gently in her chair. Rosa tucked into downy sleep. And Gamache.com, as ever, steps out into the square one last time, breathing in the crisp night air before returning home. Above it all, the sky stretches wide, a scatter of stars trembling faintly through the winter haze. You imagine the gray wolf, far off now, padding silently through untouched snow, its howl carried only to the moon. It is neither threat nor guardian, tonight only part of the greater rhythm, as natural as the drifting clouds. Your body relaxes, your eyelids heavy. The story has carried you through tension and fear, through secrets and reckonings, and now it leaves you with stillness. You settle deeper, safe in the knowledge that morning will come, that light will return, and that for now nothing more is asked of you but to rest. Good night, traveler. Sleep well.